The room was already electric, but when he leaned forward, the air snapped. All eyes turned to the end of the table where Barron Trump, hair perfectly styled, suit immaculate, voice colder than the marble floors, locked his gaze on Representative Jasmine Crockett and spoke. "She's unfit for office," he said. Gasps. The kind that slice through silence. Camera shutters clicked like gunfire. The panel moderator froze. A senator half rose from his seat, then thought better of it. Staffers at the back whispered to each other, phones already raised. Crockett didn't flinch. She blinked once, then slowly, deliberately placed her phone on the table. "Repeat that?" she said. Calm as a Sunday morning. Barron leaned back, smirk, sharpened. "Unfit. You don't belong here." She tapped her screen. A soft chime. Then silence, and then a voice. Not hers, not his, but a recording. The kind that doesn't just speak. It detonates, every head swiveled. The smug expression on Barron's face faltered. His lips parted, as if to object, but the sound playing from her phone hit harder than anything she could have said. It wasn't just a counterattack. It was evidence, irrefutable, raw, damning, the kind of thing that shifts a room. One congresswoman whispered, "Is that?" Her colleague just nodded, stunned. Barron turned pale. Crockett didn't say a word. She didn't have to. The recording said everything. A staffer in the gallery dropped their pen. A reporter mouthed, "Oh my God," and as the audio echoed through the chamber, slow, steady, brutal, every person watching knew. This wasn't just a clapback, this was a reckoning, and it had only just begun. 2 days earlier, no one would have predicted what was coming. The Capitol buzzed with the usual theater policy battles, clipped hallway interviews, interns chasing coffee. But behind the closed doors of room 2141, something rare was about to happen. A roundtable on youth power in American politics. The event, billed as bipartisan, was supposed to showcase rising stars and new voices. College organizers, student, veterans, young representatives, and inexplicably, him, Barron Trump, the youngest son of the most polarizing president in modern history. The quiet one, the mystery, the one the press had left mostly untouched until now. At just 19, his appearance was historic. He had never spoken publicly about politics, never posted so much as a thread or clip on policy. But when the invitation landed quietly backed by a GOP donor circle, Barron accepted. And within hours, speculation roared. Is Barron launching his political debut? The Prince of MAGA steps forward? The right-wing echo chamber crowned him a prodigy before he'd spoken a word. And yet, even among the conservative praise, there was a question no one wanted to ask out loud. What did he actually believe? Across the aisle sat Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, known for her sharp tongue, sharper mind, and an unapologetic voice for communities long ignored. She'd built her career in the courts and on the streets, not in the halls of inherited power. Crockett had earned every mic they gave her. Barron had been born near one. That was the tension no press release dared to mention. One came from the grassroots, the other from golden elevators. Their presence at the same table wasn't just symbolic. It was volatile. When Barron entered the room that day, whispers followed. His suit looked presidential. His tone practiced. His posture rehearsed. When Jasmine entered, cheers from the interns, nods from the aides, a quiet fist bump from a janitor, passing by. It was a collision waiting to happen, and the internet knew it. TikTok was already threading footage of their arrival with boxing bells. Barron versus Crockett trended for hours, but most expected formality. Decorated speeches, bland civility. No one expected him to go after her, and no one expected what she had waiting. This wasn't just a generational clash. It was privilege versus principle, legacy versus lived experience. And in that moment, As he prepared his remarks and she adjusted her mic, the stakes crystallized, because this roundtable wasn't about youth policy anymore. It was about what kind of future America was ready to fight for, and who we'd allow to define it. Lines were about to be drawn not in ink, but in reputation, in narrative, in truth, and only one of them was ready. He was the Trump no one could quite define. While his father's name dominated headlines, while his siblings built brands and burned bridges, Barron Trump remained behind the curtain a phantom in a gilded palace. He grew up in skyscrapers with gold leaf ceilings and Secret Service shadows. His high school was private, fortified, and curated. His appearances were few, calculated, always flanked by legacy. For years, the world left him alone. He's just a kid, they said. Let him grow up first. But he wasn't a kid anymore. And lately, the silence had shifted. Barron had started to speak. First, a cryptic appearance on a fringe podcast, "We need voices who weren't corrupted. By Washington," he'd said. Then a quiet campaign stop with his father in Iowa, where he didn't speak, but his presence spoke volumes. Clips of him nodding along to lines about woke politics and weak leadership went viral. Edits cast him in soft lighting, with orchestral build-ups and captions like, "America's next savior?" The far-right internet machine went into overdrive. They didn't just see a boy becoming a man. They saw a brand becoming a weapon. The second coming of MAGA, one blog headlined, and the myth only grew. Influencers praised his discipline, though he'd never held office, never led a march, never authored a bill. Commentators praised his vision, though no one could cite a single policy he supported. But that was the power of inheritance. He didn't have to do anything. He just had to show up. And when he did, when he accepted, the invitation to the round table, the buzz turned blinding. Barron's first political step. "Watch out, Gen Z, he's here. Crockett won't know what hit her." And maybe he believed that, because when he walked into that chamber, he carried himself like someone who had already won. He opened with lines that sounded bold to those unfamiliar with context soundbites designed to trend, not inform. The next generation needs discipline, not disruption. We've seen what happens when emotions run Congress. Some of us are raised to lead. Others audition for it. The final line was aimed directly at Crockett, delivered with a slight pause, a smirk, as if this were a stage and he'd already stolen the spotlight. But beneath the polish was something hollow. He spoke of leadership, but had never faced protest, never organized a community, never sat with grieving mothers after a shooting, or fought to keep a constituent in their home. He spoke of fitness, but had never been tested. No campaigns knocked on his door. No pundits dissected his policy. No donors demanded strategy. Because in the world Barron Trump inherited, power didn't have to be earned. It was passed down name first, merit second. And maybe that's why he miscalculated. Maybe that's why he believed that a few rehearsed lines could shake a woman who built her voice from struggle. He didn't see Jasmine Crockett as a threat. He saw her as a target. But what he didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that Crockett had been preparing for this moment her entire life. And the next few minutes would prove it. Before the lights, before the mic drops, before her voice ricocheted across chambers and social feeds, Jasmine Crockett was a public defender with a dollar store office, a stacked case docket, and a voice that made judges sit up straighter. Born in St. Louis, sharpened in Dallas, Jasmine didn't come from dynasties. She came from neighborhoods where the system didn't knock, it kicked doors in. She knew injustice by name, knew how it looked when a 16-year-old boy got a life sentence because he couldn't afford a good lawyer. Knew how it sounded when a landlord refused to fix heating in winter but had the mayor's phone number. Knew how it felt to walk into rooms where her skin, her hair, her tone made her both invisible and threatening at once, so she fought. Not for prestige, for people. In courtrooms where her clients were called cases, Jasmine called them neighbors, sons, fathers, and she won. Again and again, word spread. The firebrand with the briefcase, the young attorney who didn't just defend the Constitution, she wielded it like a blade. Community leaders took notice. Activists invited her in. She doesn't just talk the talk, one elder said. She shows up. When protests swept Texas after another unarmed black man was killed, she wasn't on stage, she was in the crowd, handing out masks, helping people find safe exits when police started kettling. And when the seat in the Texas House opened up, they didn't beg her to run. They dared her to. So she did. No dynasty, no donor machine. Just door to door, hand to hand, vote by vote. They underestimated her. White male opponents called her angry. TV hosts called her too passionate. Anonymous donors funneled thousands to beat her. They lost. She didn't just win, she stunned the establishment. And when she got to Washington, she didn't water herself down. She brought the smoke. The viral moments came fast. A calculated smirk. Before delivering a takedown so surgical, it trended on TikTok for a week. A fiery rebuke during a hearing. I wasn't sent here to whisper while you bulldoze my community. And that now iconic moment when a Republican congressman tried to cut her off and she replied, I yield to no man who yields to ignorance. The internet crowned her the clapback queen. But beneath the memes was a method. She didn't just speak truth, she wrapped it in rhythm, righteousness, and receipts because she knew what she was up against. A system that lets some inherit microphones, while others have to build them. Jasmine Crockett was more than a fighter. She was a mirror. A reflection of every black girl who was told she was too much. Every immigrant who got told to change their name. Every working-class kid who got laughed at for dreaming too big. She made them feel seen. And she made her critics feel shook because she didn't ask permission. She took the floor. And when she wasn't speaking in hearings, she was mentoring young women, walking picket lines, amplifying voices no one else invited in. She called her style unbought and unbossed. But it was more than style. It was strategy. Her power came from service. Her swagger came from scars. And her words? They came from a place deeper than politics. They came from survival. She once said in an interview, I don't yell because I'm mad. I yell because I've been ignored. But I'd rather not yell at all, I'd rather show you what silence sounds like when it's holding a receipt. And that's the thing about Jasmine Crockett, she didn't perform. She prepared. Her motto was simple, stolen from Dr. King and sharpened in her own fire. I speak when silence becomes betrayal. So when Barron Trump called her unfit, when the room froze, when his smirk curled and his allies braced for a reaction, she didn't flinch. She just reached for her phone. Because Barron thought he was throwing the first stone. But Jasmine? She had receipts. The silence after Barron's jab lasted 5 seconds, maybe 6, but it felt like a century. Then he straightened his cufflinks slow, deliberate, and leaned back into the mic with that same polished calm. I just think there's a standard, he said, addressing no one and everyone. A level of composure, of decorum, especially in government. And too often lately we've confused outrage with leadership. A few heads nodded on his side of the aisle. Crockett didn't blink. Barron continued. We need to bring back respectability, dignity. Tone matters. And when people raise their voices every time they don't get their way, it cheapens the institution. He paused for emphasis. His voice dropped just enough. Some of us were raised to lead. Others were raised to perform. The line landed like a slap. 1 or 2 gasps broke from the audience. A moderator coughed, suddenly unsure whether to intervene. But still Crockett said nothing. Not yet. She stared at him, not angry, not rattled, just assessing like a chess player about to move the queen. When she finally leaned forward, her voice didn't rise. It dropped. "You want to talk about fitness?" Barron shifted. Just a flicker. His jaw tightened. Crockett nodded, as if answering herself. All right. She reached into her blazer pocket. Slowly, calmly, like she'd rehearsed this moment. A few phones in the crowd went up, sensing something was about to happen. She placed her own phone on the table. "I didn't come here to drag anyone," she said. "But since you brought up tone, since you called me unfit, I think it's only fair the public hears something." A ripple of murmurs spread through the room. Barron's smirk faltered, not gone, but fading. Crockett tapped her screen. The phone lit up. She hit play, and the recording began. It started soft, muffled, but within seconds, the words became clear. A voice, unmistakable. Familiar. Someone close to Barron. Maybe even Barron himself. "I don't need to study those clowns. They're just noise. We show up, they yell, and we win anyway. They're emotional. We're strategic." The audio crackled, continued. More lines. Arrogant, disdainful, dismissive. Suddenly the room wasn't on Barron's side. Not even close. Staffers looked around nervously. Reporters froze mid-note. One aide for a Republican senator slowly slid his phone into his pocket, avoiding eye contact with anyone. Barron opened his mouth, then closed it. Crockett didn't look at him. She just let the words play, because this wasn't a speech. This was evidence. And the tape was still rolling. The voice on the recording was unmistakable. It belonged to Jason Merriweather, a longtime Trump strategist, political commentator, and Barron's unofficial mentor. The date stamp on the file was recent, less than 3 weeks old. "I mean, let's be real." Jason's voice crackled through the speakers. "The kid doesn't even know how many justices are on the Supreme Court. But his name carries weight, so we put him out there. Feed him. A few lines, keep him on script. He's tall, clean cut, that's the image. The rest? We clean it up in post." A stunned hush swept the room. Barron stared at the phone like it had grown fangs. Jasmine Crockett didn't gloat, didn't smile. She simply tilted the mic closer and said, "Let's keep going." Click. The next audio clip. Merriweather again, this time laughing. He tried to quote Frederick Douglass last week and called him Frederick Douglassville. I had to walk out the room. A smattering of muffled laughter broke out not from Crockett's side, but from the neutral middle. Even one conservative staffer at the back couldn't help a visible snort. Barron's cheeks flushed red. He opened his mouth, closed it, adjusted his tie. And Crockett? Still silent, still calm, still deadly. Click, a third clip. A different voice, now a GOP donor, perhaps. Older. Tired. "Look, he's a kid. We can't expect him to understand policy. What we need is the illusion of youthful energy. Someone who looks like the future, but obeys like the past." Gasps. Audible this time. One reporter's pen stopped mid-sentence. Crockett finally spoke. "So I ask again," she said, her voice low and surgical. "Is this leadership?" She looked across the table at Barron, who stared blankly at the desk, in front of him. His fingers twitched beside his water bottle. "Is this what fitness looks like?" Click. One final clip. Jason again. He called Jasmine Crockett, that loud chick from Dallas. Said she's the perfect example of why we need cameras off in committee hearings. Because women like her get too much airtime when they pop off. That did it. A ripple of ohs filled the chamber, then applause, scattered at first, then growing, not from everyone, but from enough. Crockett didn't acknowledge it. She tapped pause. Let the room simmer. "I've spent my life building policy," she said, voice unwavering. "In courtrooms, in churches, on the streets. I've written legislation that keeps kids fed and families housed. I don't need legacy. I earned my place. She turned to Barron. You called me unfit, she said softly. Because I speak with passion. Because I won't shrink to fit your comfort. She leaned in just enough. You confuse volume with volatility. But I've never been volatile. I've been ignored. Until now. Another beat, then the line that would live on forever. Now tell me again, she said, eyes locked on his. Who's unfit? The silence was thunderous. Barron looked up, tried to speak, but no words came. Just a half-formed syllable, swallowed by the weight of the moment. The moderator called for a recess, but the story had already escaped the room. Phones were buzzing. Twitter was exploding. Clips of the recording were already hitting feeds. Crockett, clap back, unfit is relative. Receipts don't lie. The internet had heard the mic drop, and it wasn't going to forget, because this moment didn't just break the room, it broke the internet. By the time the session adjourned, Crockett's phone was already vibrating non-stop, not from staff or press, but from the internet. In less than 15 minutes, a clip of her final line, "Now tell me again who's unfit," hit 2.4 million views on X. By 30, it had crossed 7. Within the hour, the hashtags were multiplying like wildfire. Crockett mic drop, unfit for Barron, receipts over royalty. Mike checkmate edits flooded TikTok. One stitched Crockett's stare with Kendrick Lamar's, "Sit down, be humble." Another added a slow zoom on Barron's face, while a trending sound, a single, stretched-out damn, echoed in the background. By morning, there were duets of duets, reaction videos, teenagers in classrooms whispering, "She had receipts," as if quoting scripture. A Twitch streamer with 2 million followers paused his gameplay to play the clip. His chat lit up in real time. "Wait, she ate him. This ain't a debate. This is a funeral. She just made politics go platinum." Comment sections became confessionals. "I wasn't even political until I saw this. She just bodied. Barron with facts. I watched it 10 times and it gets better. She said what my whole generation's been feeling." The remixers got to work. By the end of the day, Crockett's voice had been auto-tuned into a dance track. A chorus repeated her line, "Who's unfit?" over a trap beat. The sound hit the top of TikTok's trending page. Celebrities joined the fray. Ava DuVernay tweeted, "This is what it looks like when preparation meets purpose. Well done, Rapier Crockett." Chance the Rapper posted the video with one word, "Queen." Even. Some unexpected figures chimed in. A conservative columnist admitted on air, "Look, I don't agree with her politics, but if you're asking who won that exchange, it wasn't Barron." A retired GOP senator tweeted, "Note to the next generation, legacy without substance is a short ride." Meanwhile, Barron Trump went dark. No statement, no follow-up, no posts. A few MAGA influencers tried to spin it, claimed the recording was fake, claimed it was an ambush. But their voices were drowned out by the wave, because the story wasn't just about Barron anymore. It was about what he represented, privilege without purpose, entitlement dressed as leadership, a name with no weight behind it. And in contrast, Jasmine Crockett. Not viral by accident. Viral because her voice echoed the lived experiences of millions. She wasn't polished. She was practiced. She didn't dominate with volume. She landed with truth. Commentators began calling her the voice of a generation. Think pieces dropped with titles like "The Power of Receipts," "Why Gen Z Politics Sounds Like Jasmine Crockett." Not just a clapback. The anatomy of a political shift. College students quoted her in campus forums. Young organizers used her speech in training workshops. Memes turned into movements. And while the pundits analyzed, dissected, and debated, Crockett said nothing. At least not yet. She stayed quiet for 48 hours. Let the wave build. Let the country lean in. And then when the spotlight was at its brightest, she stepped back up to the mic. Because Jasmine Crockett wasn't done. She had a message. Not for Barron, not for Congress, but for every young person watching. The press gathered like storm clouds, cameras clicked, flashes flared, and reporters shouted questions, all aiming to get the first word from the woman who had just shifted the nation's conversation. Jasmine Crockett stood behind a wooden podium outside the Capitol. No filter, no teleprompter. Just her, the flag at half-mast behind her, and a crowd ready to listen. She waited until the noise died down, and then she spoke. To every young black woman who's ever been called too loud, too angry, too unfit, this moment was for you. The crowd fell into a hush. For every person who's walked into a room and been told to shrink, who's been told to smile instead of speak, who's been punished for passion while others get praised for power. This moment was yours too. She didn't mention Barron's name. Not once. Because it was never just about him. This isn't about winning an argument, she continued. It's about telling the truth. And sometimes telling the truth feels like disruption. But truth isn't noise. It's the foundation of justice. She placed both hands on the podium. You don't have to be born into a name to lead. You don't need permission from legacy to serve your community. Power doesn't come from your last name, it comes from your voice. A ripple of applause built behind the press line. Crockett went on. This country's at a crossroads. On one side, entitlement, inheritance, closed rooms and closed minds. On the other, empathy, earned experience, and the courage to challenge what's broken. She looked out over the crowd at the young staffers holding clipboards, at the students, filming on their phones, at the faces leaning forward, hungry for something more than sound bites. I know what side I'm on. She let the silence stretch. Just long enough. I didn't come to Congress to be palatable. I came to be useful. I came to represent voices that never make it past the velvet ropes. She smiled, but it wasn't soft. It was steady. You might call that unfit. I call it necessary. And then, the line that would end up on murals, yearbooks, and protest signs from D.C. to Detroit. The next voice to challenge injustice could be yours. She stepped back, and the mic again was hers. An insult was thrown, but it didn't land, because Jasmine Crockett didn't just defend herself. She redefined the rules. She flipped the script with silence, facts, and fire. She turned a swipe at her worth into a national wake-up call. And in doing so, she reminded every viewer watching that truth still echoes louder than arrogance. She didn't raise her voice. She raised the standard, and the mic? It wasn't the only thing she dropped. She dropped the pretense. She dropped the myth of inherited strength. She dropped every excuse for staying silent in the face of power. So now it's your turn. If this moment moved, you don't scroll away. Share it, replay it. Subscribe. Join the movement that believes in earned power, lived experience, and voices that rise because they must. Because this wasn't just a viral clip. It was a message, a challenge, a mirror. And in this era where filters blur, truth and legacy gets louder than justice, remember this. Facts still hit harder than legacy.